Well, good afternoon, everyone. The H1B Guy here, and today, the H1B Guy Live, October 12th, 2022, where I'll be discussing will final action dates for EB2 for all chargeability be established, and more immigration reform included in the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and like this video so that I can continue to produce more content like this for you. I also wanted to mention the H1B Guy offers a variety of consulting services. I help businesses and individuals solve complex work authorization issues in the recruitment process while bringing awareness to employment-based immigration benefits. If I can help you, please reach out. I'd love to hear how. And you can book an appointment directly with me via the h1bguy.com. Today's live stream is brought to you by Syndesis and Path to Canada, the ideal plan B for high-skilled immigrants currently located in the U.S. whose status may be uncertain. By PERM-ads.com, the industry leader in providing a seamless experience for employers and immigration attorneys navigating the complex PERM recruitment ad phase of the labor certification process. And also by Mob Squad. Are you a technology professional facing U.S. work visa-related challenges? Don't leave your fate up to chance. Our partner Mob Squad has a solution. Join the squad. Well, today is Wednesday, again, October the 12th, a little after 3 p.m. Eastern here in the U.S. Happy to be back with you here on another live stream on this Wednesday. Did my last live stream last Wednesday on October the 5th, where we did a little bit of a November visa bulletin preview. Talked about STEM being included in the NDAA and also took your questions and comments. I wanted to start today off on Saturday, this past Saturday, on October the 8th, I posted the H1B Guy grades for my November 2022 visa bulletin predictions. And while a lot of you haven't had a chance to maybe watch that video, I did want to talk about something that I covered kind of towards the end of the post. And what I thought was kind of the most interesting thing that came from the November 2022 visa bulletin. And that was when I discussed Section E that was posted really at the very bottom of the visa bulletin. And Section E talked about visa availability in the employment second category. And it went on to say, quote, increased demand in the employment second category may necessitate the establishment of a worldwide final action date in the coming months to hold number use within the maximum allowed under the fiscal year 2023 annual limit. This situation will be continually monitored and any necessary adjustments will be made accordingly. So, why do I want to talk about this, right? I think that we've seen, and I've seen for the most part, all chargeability refers to rest of the world, right? And, the interesting thing is that, annually, right? When we look at the 140,000 annually and, 7%, right, of that maximum allowed, is a little over 9,000, right? 9,000 available total employment-based visas for all categories. And so I think when you think about what that means, right? Now that they're talking about establishing a worldwide final action date, for me that's interesting because each country's given 9,800 annually, and now we're talking about we've never really seen a final action date for all chargeability. The fact that this is coming up kind of led me down the path to say, okay, well, what did the I-140 approval numbers for 2021 look like? And so in the video description is a link to the I-140 immigrant petition for alien worker, number of petitions received and current status approvals. And this is data that goes from 2011 through Q1 and Q2 of 2021. But I don't see really a significant increase from all chargeability. This also includes Philippines, South Korea, and Brazil. And when I look at EB2 for, let's just say, all countries, and this is Q1, Q2, and we look at number of approvals so far through Q1 and Q2 of 2021 is a little over 14,000, with pending, right? Pending cases at 17,000. So, that's little over 31,000 total. And if we were just to look at, again, as I mentioned, Brazil and EB2 combined a little over 1,200 in terms of approved and pending through Q1, Q2. And looking at the Philippines as another example here, and we look at through Q1, Q2 of 2021 and EB2, it's only 160. I can look at South Korea and tell you that for EB1 and EB2, total through Q1, Q2 is a little over 1,000. So if we just take these numbers and double them, I'm really interested to see how this overall demand is going to necessitate, as they allude to, a final action date for worldwide limits. I think that it's really interesting, and it says a lot. It says that all of the rapid forward movement and advancement that we've seen in EB3 during 2021 and really EB2 through this 2020 year, now that they're talking about establishing a final action for the rest of the world, it lends itself to believe that as is, the bulletin as is could have a probability to remain as we see it, with probably EB1 remaining current and minimal movement going forward in other categories. And so I thought this was definitely worth talking about. I've used these I-140 approval numbers pretty significantly as part of some of my data analytics and reasoning when I do my visa bulletin predictions, because the overall calculations can kind of give you an idea, right, when we've had the spillover numbers as to where those numbers are going to be allocated. And a lot of it, of course, when we look at the total, right, you can look at India and see why the situation is what it is, which is to say, over the last 10 years, or 2000, all of 2011 through Q1 and Q2 of 2021, there's been over 338,000 EB2 I-140s approved for India. And you can break it down all you want, but there's only 9,800 available for all preferences annually per country. And so we can see why this issue, this backlog that I've talked about for the better part of a couple of years has been created. The interesting thing that I did notice when I was looking at some of China's numbers, specifically in EB2, and that is, it looks like China for EB2 could have one of the lowest from 2021, just based on what I see, going back to probably 2018. So, a little over 4,000 cases total through Q1 and Q2, just doubling that, assuming that those numbers would double, in Q3 and Q4. Would take it back to kind of the 2018 timeframe, whereas in 19 and 20 we saw well over 10,000 EB2 cases, specifically for China. So that's why you see final action dates in that 2019 timeframe for China. So some really interesting things happening right now, buried down in the very bottom of the visa bulletin, again in section E. It very clearly stated that increased demand in EB2, specifically for worldwide, could necessitate a final action date coming in the next few months. We can go back to over the last 12 months when there's been discussions about possible corrective action for EB4, EB2, and even EB3 that we saw really at the beginning of last fiscal year. So we'll continue to keep our eyes on this for sure. I'm really interested to see once the reporting is completed on Q3 and Q4 numbers from USCIS on their overall I-140 immigrant petitions for alien workers. Once those numbers are fully publicized, to get a good idea of where we stand. But just kind of through the first two quarters of 2021, again, a little over 16,000 total applications, total petitions, if you will, for India, and a little over 4,000 for China. But all in EB2 specifically is the category that I'm referring to here. And then when we look at, again, for all chargeability, right? That's all countries outside of Korea, Brazil, the ones that were previously mentioned, Philippines, China, and India. That number's 31,000, a little over 31,000. So doubling that gets us to 63,000, which is actually less than we saw in 2020, 2019, 2018. It would be the lowest number for all countries going back to fiscal year 2000 and 2015. So again, the effect of this, when we look at it, is okay. Why then are we seeing this come up now? And I don't have an answer for it. It's very puzzling to me. I'd love to hear from many of you to know, kind of what you're hearing and maybe some of your reasoning as to why this is something that seems to be rearing its head at this point. The other thing that I wanted to just briefly mention that I did cover in the H1B Guy grades, for November 2022 visa bulletin predictions versus the actual bulletin released, that was missing from the November visa bulletin. Although USCIS has gone on record and stated that there would be 200,000 employment-based visas available for fiscal year 2023, that's yet to be confirmed by the Department of State in the visa bulletin. So I'm curious to see if December's visa bulletin will include the overall employment-based preferences available for fiscal year 2023 for both employment and for family, because we see kind of the spillover that's been occurring in family-based visas over the last couple of years. So I'm just curious if that's something that has a possibility to continue. We'll be doing a Q&A. I've got one more topic I wanted to discuss, the NDAA, but I do see some questions or comments already in the chat. If you have other questions or comments, curious to see what your thoughts are around the possibility of final action dates being established for all chargeability, or rest of the world, or ROW as we refer to it. Why do you think that's something that's currently coming up? I just covered the I-140 numbers that are through Q1 and Q2 of fiscal year 2021, that don't really show me that there's been significant demand increase. Now, maybe fiscal year 2022 shows a different number. I would have to go through and comb through that data and try to find it. But again, I think it's definitely confusing. It's absolutely a head scratcher, and something that I'm sure we'll continue to be trying to get a better understanding of and figure out as we move forward. But it does tell me that probably the beginning of the year, maybe January, February, March, we could see a final action established for EB2 for all chargeability. And if that were to be the case, I'm assuming it'd probably be like a 2021 or maybe early 2022 cutoff. Really, we'll definitely be following this very closely. Want to ask you again, if you haven't already, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and make sure you click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live like we have here today on Wednesday, October the 12th, 2022. If you're looking for ways to support the H1B Guy channel and the H1B Guy platform, you can do so currently through the super chat function during this live stream. And if you're watching or listening to this at a later date, you can also leave a super thanks. Any contributions that are made are invested back into the technology of this platform. And I've got some exciting things that I'm really working on as we head into 2023. So just really appreciate all of your support, but mainly just make sure you're subscribed to this channel. If you like my content, that helps get the word out in terms of what we do here. Been at this on this platform now for a little over 2 years and had the opportunity to interact and meet thousands of individuals from all over the world. And just very grateful for that opportunity. For those of you who have kept up with this channel, know that doing these live streams is one of my favorite things to do. I try to do them almost on a weekly basis, typically on Wednesdays, either at 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern. If you have questions or comments, please drop those in the chat and I will be getting to them. During last week's live stream on October the 5th, I did talk briefly about, the foreign national STEM exemption being added to the NDAA, where Senator Durbin and Senator Mike Rounds, Republican senator from South Dakota, had put into or added an amendment to the NDAA, the Senate version of the NDAA, which exempts advanced STEM degree holders from green card limits. And, ultimately was initially part of kind of the CHIPS Act, but then was scrapped. So here we see this kind of coming back around. And so I talked about that a little bit last week. And then late last week, earlier this week, I think news broke maybe Monday or Tuesday that the documented dreamers provisions, for those of you who've, again, I haven't had my friend Deep Patel on from Improve the Dream in almost a year now. He's moved on to much higher media conglomerates, but he was recently interviewed by Fox News and talked about their provision, which ultimately protects documented dreamers from aging out, to be included in the NDAA or even potentially some sort of omnibus. But this has been one of the pieces of immigration reform that I've talked about in advocacy, in support of now for the better part of almost 2 years. And that is to say that, really, I hope that we can end this self-deportation for those aging out at 21, that we can put an end to individuals who have lived in the U.S., who were brought here legally as minors by their parents, and help them avoid international tuition as they go through U.S. Institutions of higher education. But what's interesting about this add-on to the NDAA is, again, it does have some of that bipartisan support. With several senators signed on to it, it's had a lot of Republican support in the House. So it will be interesting. And I think where I do want to warn everyone as we look at kind of retaining some hope for immigration reform to be included in, maybe a larger bill like the NDAA or, the omnibus is previously mentioned, is that the more immigration reform we add into that, the higher probability of those amendments being excluded. I've said that I thought that the documented dreamer, the America's Children's Act, that text, that language, as a standalone had a high probability of passing, or potentially being included in some sort of larger overall budget bill. So here we are. I think the STEM has a good leg to stand on too. But when we look at kind of larger immigration reform as a whole, visa recapture, clearing the green card backlog. I think those are absolutely back burner immigration reform pieces. I did a live stream back in September, end of August, where I talked about is immigration reform for 2022 dead, over? And here it is, kind of resurfacing itself in this October session. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with the NDAA as it makes its way onto the Senate floor for debate, what's going to be included and what's not. But, you know, there's also the pieces of the dreamers, right? The Afghan refugees, immigration reform that could be included in one of these larger spending bills that we could see over the next 2.5 months or so. And, you know, if you haven't already, um, to looks like I froze. I wanted to mention again, if you haven't already, please make sure to like this video, subscribe channel here on YouTube, and make sure you click the bell for. I am experiencing, it looks like, some connectivity issues. So if I'm freezing, just hopefully the audio is. We'll move into the Q&A portion here. If you do have, and I will go ahead and start working towards those right now. I'm going to make sure my connection's okay. Looks like I'm back online now. Just having some buffers still with me. First question comes from May 2016. When can I expect my date to become current? A while. 2026. I don't see 2016 becoming, fortunately. That's some bad news that I have to bear, but it is just the truth. It's when you see years of corrective action occur, I just don't see it going to have a future anytime soon. At least that 10-year, 3,800 day calculating. There's a lot of folks that feel like with the 60,000 spillover, there's going to be movement again in EB2. But again, if we take kind of the news on final action dates being established for possibly for all chargeability for rest of world, I think that's going to have a direct impact on India EB2 forward movement over the next several months. Sivan asks, any progress on H1B stamping from US? I thought I saw something last week talking about this, but I've not heard any confirmation that this is currently an option. I could be incorrect in that, but my understanding is that stamping still requires consular processing outside of the US. I talked about it last week, and I said, you know, this would be just a no-brainer executive order or notice for proposed rulemaking that could easily change some of the processing and reduce some of the stress and anxiety for high school immigrants currently living and working in the U.S. Savon, it's something that I'd love to see, but have you heard anything? I'm curious. Like I said, I saw something somewhere last week, but I didn't read into it further because it didn't look like what I'd call a super reliable source. So again, that's something that I've spoke out in proposal and support of. I think it is a no-brainer. It absolutely should be something that we have the capabilities to process here, specifically in some of our major metro areas, right? We think about if it were hub-based, New York, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Dallas, Miami, Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle, right? Denver. We could that could be something that could be easily implemented in, maybe 15 to 20 of the major U.S. metropolitans. Good question, though, Savan. Thank you. Mary asks, FAQs mentioned that row might not be current. This might cause any EB2 get less numbers based on this. Would it be possible even EB2 priority might reach January 2014? Well, we're in April 2012 currently for final action, Mary, and I think you're absolutely right, as I've kind of alluded to here. When you see in that section E, it's talking about the possibility of final action being established for worldwide limits. It does create some concern on what does that mean for spillover. But understand, spillover, the 60,000 that are available in terms of the first come first serve, right? It's based on the date of filing, the priority date specifically. Okay. And so, when you take that into account, and we look at, as I mentioned, for India and EB2 in the last 10 years, literally, what's been approved for India, and it was 338,000 approvals, not counting Q4 fiscal year 2021. And then if you compare that to all chargeability, right, like all countries during that same time frame, 583,000. So it's a difference of literally 250-ish thousand individuals versus India and the rest of the world. So it's a really, really tight number there. Mary asks, if removing counting family members can be done through an executive action by president is correct, why can't everyone request that instead of new bills? What's your take on that? Yeah, I think this is one of the things that is discussed, but really kind of passed over, Mary, when we talk about dependents and spouses counting in the overall number use, right? So these I-140 petition numbers that I've been covering, right, that 338,000 in the last 10 years for India and EB2 specifically, let's just say that there's 1.5, right, spouses or dependents, 1.5 for all of those 338,000. And so that's why you see the million, 2 million plus that we see in the backlog, because it's literally over 600,000 individuals from India and another 80 to 100,000 individuals from China, and then their spouses and dependents that are counted in that 1.2 million number that we've talked about a good bit. But that's a great point. I think that's something that, ultimately, could it be done by executive action? Yes. But I think if the Biden administration has shown us anything, it is their unwillingness to utilize executive action for employment-based immigration. They're not going to do it. They prefer a legislative approach completely. Sushian asks, EB3 ended 2014, folks going to be lucky in the next few months? Well, that's a good question, because I really thought that, we'd continue to see kind of incremental movement for EB3 in both India and China for November, and then that didn't happen. That does give me cause for concern for movement going forward. If I think we see any movement in EB3, I think it's going to continue to be incremental, 30 to 45 days, no more than 60. So I don't think you're going to get lucky in the next few months unless something drastically happens. I think you're probably looking into next fiscal year at this point, most likely, maybe even a little bit further. Maybe we're getting all the way into calendar year 2024 for you session, but we'll see. But I don't think you're going to get lucky in the next few months. No. Kalyani asked, my PD is May 2015 and EB2. Do I think the filing date can be current in this fiscal year? I don't. I'm not sure that it will get through all of 2013 into 2014, which you were kind of in this interesting bubble, right? If we go back and look at September, right? What was our final dates in September? And you were that December 2014. Dates of filing was January 2015. You were literally like 4 months away. But I think it's going to take it a while, Kalyani, to get back there. I do. I think at least next year, based on no movement in November, Section E now, a lot going on. Absolutely. Any projections on October 2015 and EB2 filing date? Not final action. CA asks. Okay, so you're asking for my projection on October 2015 for date of filing. Okay, so let's think about that, right? There was no movement for NDAA 2 data filing. It was May 2012. You're asking for October 2015 at this point. The end of next year, maybe. I think that's. I'm not hopeful for you, CA, unfortunately, and that's dates of filing. Maybe this is pie in the sky. Maybe it's that October 2023 bulletin for you on that dates of filing, and then they'll accept dates of filing. Maybe it pushes all the way to October 2015 after it ended this past fiscal year, January 1st, 2015. I just wanted to ask you again one last time. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we post new content here to this channel or go live like we have here today on Wednesday, October the 12th, 2022, a little after 3 p.m. Eastern. Have about 12, 13 minutes left to do Q&A. I do see a few more questions or comments. So if you do have other questions or comments, please drop those in the chat. Would love to discuss those with you here over maybe the next 10 minutes or so. Savan says, thanks, liked and subscribed. Really appreciate that. Again, as I said, that's if I have a small ask for anyone who joins these live streams or watches any of my content, especially for those of you who are returning viewers. Please subscribe to the channel, like my videos, dislike my videos. However you're feeling that day, leave me a comment. I love to hear from you and just appreciate all of your continued support. And for those of you who reach out to me, I appreciate the interactions and the opportunity to engage with you. Kalyani says, if the spiller is supposed to be given a first come, first serve base, then the 60K should be given to India since last year Roe is used a good number. That's the thought process, right? Because it's based on priority date, oldest to most recent. And that's why I think it's really confusing, and there seems to be some mixed signals going on. And a lot of lack of transparency occurring within USCIS and the Department of State. It appears to me, as we've typically seen, we've seen advanced movement happen, then we've seen corrective action happen 2 years in a row. So it leads me to believe you could say that was done with every intention to utilize all of the remaining number usage, but why advance the dates so far in advance, and then there's no availability in September. There's no number availability. So then you had to make it unavailable. It's just crazy. Hey, Prabodh, how are you? Is there any news discussion around increasing registration fees of $10, which is probably multiple fake applications? Yeah, Prabo, that's a great question. I've speculated on this one for 2 years now, which is to say, I don't think $100 is enough. I think if you want to really significantly increase the barrier to entry, you could make it $100 non-refundable, and you're still going to get 250, 300,000 applications, registrations. But if you really want to make that barrier to entry significant and make that non-refundable, now we're talking 500 to 1,000. Employers, specifically these sub vendors out there, third-party middlemen, um, that would change the game for those employers. They aren't going to risk the capital on somebody who's uh, in the U.S. in a different status who doesn't currently have an employment with them. That they won't make that investment. They won't do a 500 or 1,000. Now, some of the larger integrators who have deeper pockets, no problem. But it will eliminate some of these, mom and pop middlemen, as I call them, third party vendors, right? That would eliminate that. But no, there's not been any discussion that I've heard. It's been all speculation and talking heads like myself that's talked about it. Have time for a few more questions or comments, please. If you've got any, drop those in the chat. I will do my best to get to those over the next 5 or so minutes here. Hey, Ramakrishnan, how are you? Based on current scenarios, it's safe to assume that it will take 10 years to get green card from the date of filing priority date for Indian nationals. Yeah. You've followed me for a long time, Rama. You know how I feel about this. I've used that 3,800 as kind of an estimate, right? And, I'll continue to stick by that even with this retrogression. I just feel like if you look at, current, let's say May 2012, November 2022, that's on dates of filing. Okay. It lends itself to show you 3,836 days. So I still like to utilize somewhere in that 3,800 ballpark as kind of my current estimate. So again, if we want to take an example from the stream here, and let's say Kalyani, who was at May 2015, right? May 2015. Where does that put Kalyani? Well, it to get to that 3,800 day mark is probably 2024. Let me see, March 2024. I mean, literally the end of 2024 for Kalyani's 3,500 days. So literally now we're into May of 2025. It's pretty crazy when you look at it like this. Just saying, okay, May 1st, 2015, 3,800 days. What does that mean? I mean, it literally is tracking it at over 10 years right now, Rama. So that's October 1st, 2025 for Kalyani, who is a May 1st, 2015, is 3,806 days. Now, granted, these are just kind of pie in the sky calculations, but ultimately, I think it will hold true unless something drastically changes. Kalyani asked, what will happen if USCIS reject EB1 CI-140, though someone already had an I-140 and EB2 and EB3? Then they should be okay for the EB2 and EB3. I don't believe it has an impact, the EB1C rejection, on the previously approved I-140s, as long as you're working for the current employer. Mary said, when they said pending applications are 40K and EB2 India, would they be processed according to priority date as 2014 applicants also filed for AOS? Yeah, it should be filed in the priority of received based on priority date, if that makes sense. There are some percentages of applicants who changed employer and had to go through a whole labor process, but still have 2013 PD and need to be adjudicated before any 2014 pending applications. Yeah, go back to October 2020. The upgrade, downgrade, you know, all of that happened, significant downgrades that happened, and kind of the why behind it. I knew something wasn't right in October of 2020. And, this channel had been around at that point a little over 3 months. And I had many of you reach out to me and ask my advice. And I advised for almost a year not to downgrade. I had a change of heart very briefly based on a chat with Charlie, and I'm back to should have probably never downgraded, because those downgrade cases, many of which are still currently pending, and it's a crime. It really is. It's crazy. Last question. Have I heard any action from USCIS to figure out duplicate AOS, as many downgraded and upgraded on same applications? Yeah, I think that's why you see so many cases pending. But I don't know how they're handling that internally. As far as I know, those cases could be in some paper box in a cave somewhere. I say that jokingly, but with some truth in how things actually operate. It's pretty crazy. When you rely on a lot of paper manual processes versus automated digitization, that's what creates these issues. And it seems like it's been a first in, first out more recently than last in, first out. All right, last one, Shri. How about December 22nd, 2014? All right, so you need, USCIS does occasionally do the 22nd. As we've seen, they'll do the 22nd, sometimes the 15th, sometimes the 8th. You were as literally as close as it gets, right, with that December 1st, 2014 in final action. But let's see here. If I were to go by my calculation that I've been using, that equation, that 3,800, which many dispute, it says June 1st of 2025. It just doesn't seem right, does it? That, this past September, you were 21 days away, and now just kind of basing it on a 3,800 day multiplier, you're now at June 1st of 2025. I hope that a lot of these cases clear out over the next year, and that your number maybe drops down to 3,500 days, which would be a huge benefit. That would actually put you in 2024. But this is kind of where we are right now. And then last one, Rama says, thanks for answering my question. We always talk about USCIS, but DLL is taking forever. PERM and prevailing wage determination to approve. What could be the reason for DLL to be so slow? Bureaucracy. They're probably still blaming COVID, and they're probably blaming lack of human resources, lack of human capital, and ability to process so many cases. And again, these are human beings that are dealing with these, right? Prevailing wage determinations for LCAs, those are turning around pretty quickly, but prevailing wage determinations for PERM, you're looking at 3 to 4 months. PERM labor, you're looking at right now, I'd say still about 18 months from when it's initiated to when it's certified. But that's also why you got to use somebody like my good friend Carl Balsmeyer at perm-ads.com. Carl can help condense that process. And so mention that to your employer. If you're going to be going through PERM labor certification, that you heard about perm-ads.com from the H1B guy, and they should reach out to him to see how they can reduce their cost and overhead associated with perm labor certification recruitment advertising. So I'm going to wrap this up. Wanted to thank everyone who took time to join me here today. Really appreciate your continued support. As I mentioned, there are ways to help produce the H1B Guy platform and the content that we put out here on this channel and on the h1bguy.com via the link in the video description below. You can support me through the super thanks function if you're watching or listening to this at a later date. If you're listening to the H1B Guy podcast, which this will post out later this afternoon, just would like to say thank you for taking the time to listen on audio version. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a rating, would really appreciate that as well. Today's live stream is brought to you by Syndesis and Path to Canada, the ideal plan B for high-skilled immigrants currently located in the U.S. whose status may be uncertain. If you're facing H1B denial or OPT expiration, don't get caught off guard. Make sure you have a plan B, and Syndesis and Path to Canada are your answers. They'll gladly help you navigate the process, and if you'd like to find out if you qualify, please be sure to use the link in the video description below, and someone from Syndesis or Path to Canada will be in touch. And as I mentioned, PERM-ads.com, the industry leader in providing a seamless experience for employers and immigration attorneys navigating the complex PERM recruitment ad phase of the labor certification process. If you want to reduce your costs and overhead associated with PERM labor certification recruitment advertising, let my friend Carl Balsmeyer and his team at PERM-ads.com help you. And also by Mob Squad. Are you a technology professional facing U.S. work visa-related challenges? Don't leave your fate up to chance. Our partner Mob Squad has a solution. Mob Squad helps technology professionals facing U.S. work visa-related uncertainty remain working with our current U.S. company nearshore from Canada, as well as technology professionals from around the world who are seeking an opportunity to find a rewarding career in North America. Through their partnership with the Canadian government, they can obtain a Canadian work permit for you and your spouse in as little as 8 weeks. So whether you're looking to stay working with your current U.S. company or you want to find a new opportunity in Canada, please find out how the team at Mob Squad can help you via the link in the video description below. Join the squad. Again, last time, please like this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live like we have here today. Wanted to thank those of you who bared with me through those technical difficulties. Was having some buffering issues about midway through the video. But thank you to those of you who've made it this far. Really appreciate your taking the time to watch my live stream and take time to watch this video. I just really appreciate your support. Connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter, join the H1B Guy Telegram group, follow me on Facebook, Instagram. But if you check out the h1bguy.com, if you haven't been there in a while, there is a library of content. I'm Robert. I'm the H1B Guy, your global source for all things H1B.